Hi, my name is Sergey Gusев. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will be painting a yellow rose in oils on canvas, so let's get started. In the very beginning I'm going to make a very quick under drawing and under painting at the same time. I'm using only one color, transparent red oxide lake by the Old Holland. I'm working with a bristle brush and a bit of medium. I care mostly for a good composition right now. And then after this quick underpainting, I want to start working with the colors from my palette, using an entire palette. Usually it's easy to start working from the darks, so from the dark shadows. We can use a bit of yellow lake, a bit of scarlet lake. You can add a bit of burnt umber maybe. We need to get a very dark, deep color, but not black and not just dark brown. So we need to care for the colors right from the beginning. And I would suggest you, if you're a beginner, if you do not have a big experience in colors, I would highly recommend you to maybe divide your palette into two parts, and in one part you can put paints for the lights and in the other part for the shadows. The thing is that usually we use different colors for the lights and for the shadows. I mean, for the lights we can use some very cool and bright colors like yellow lake, for example, or cadmium lemon, or cadmium red deep, or scarlet lake, white, maybe a bit of yellow ochre. And for the darks we can use some burnt umber or raw umber, maybe burnt sienna, ultramarine, some greens, and so on. So the thing is that I do not recommend you to find one color like middle tone and then add white for the lights and black or dark brown for the shadows. This is going to be a mistake, making your painting look quite muddy in the shadows and in the lights, a little bit gray, not bright, not expressive, so not really pencil or picturesque. Therefore, in my opinion, if you do not have a big experience in painting, it's better to use some colors only for the shadows and some only for the lights. And in this case we're working on a very bright painting. It's a rose, almost pure yellow in the lights. We can use color directly from the tube. And if you decide to, for example, use some burnt umber or raw umber or any other dark brown or black for halftones, you can get a very muddy color which does not fit the colors from the original picture. Even right now, if you look at the shadows in my painting, you can see that the shadows are not brown and they're not black. They're more like brown reddish plus maybe ochre, so it's a very complicated color. It's definitely not yellow plus raw umber. It's not yellow plus black. This is the thing, in my opinion. We have to use different colors. And when you get more experience, of course, you will understand better how to use them, and maybe you will be able to use umbers for the lights or paint with black colors, because some artists, paint with black. It's not a problem. But in my opinion, if you are a beginner, you need to first of all collect some experience, and then you'll be able to apply different techniques, and you will understand better how to use different colors and where. Right now I'm working on the shadows. The shadows are full of reflected light. We have a lot of bright lights around, and we can see a lot of reflected light in the shadows. So the shadows won't be simply black or brown. They get a lot of reflections, making the shadows very deep, very complicated in colors. And so we have to use some red, though obviously the rose is yellow, but in the shadows we can use some red, some ochre to make the color more interesting and more picturesque. In the lights we can use a bit of ultramarine to make the halftone slightly greenish. So you see that we don't use some black or brown to darken the color. We can use some ultramarine, for example, And the color will look darker, but more interesting, more complicated, more alive. Of course, you know that the shadows are always darker than the lights, and we apply the same approach here in painting, but we simply make them darker using some random colors, just dark tones from the palette. We can lose this picturesque effect, so it will be looking almost like a drawing. We have to care not just for the tonal values, but also for warm and cool colors. Right now in my painting you can see a lot of different shades. I'm using a lot of yellow, very strong yellow, directly from the tubes. Some petals will be cooler, so I use a bit of lemon yellow and a bit of ultramarine to make this color look slightly greenish. The shadows are very warm because the light source is cool, and we need to look for different interesting shades in the shadows. Like I mentioned, we can use some red or ochre, but try to avoid browns and don't paint with browns on purpose. In the very beginning you can paint even brighter than you see. So right now in the shadows you can see almost pure scarlet lake somewhere. And it does not make this rose look not yellow. We still can see that this is a yellow rose, but the color is a lot more complicated. Let's block in some backgrounds, some very cool and dark greens from the leaves. It's gonna be easier to see the halftones of the rose when we surround it with dark greens. Then we get back to the rose. I want to add more lights. I have to use white. So of course we can use white. Just remember that the color can be a lot more interesting than just yellow plus white. We can mix different yellows. We can add a tiny bit of ultramarine, a tiny bit of white, and the color will look a lot more interesting. We need to put some darker accents in the shadows. We need to find a nice color on the palette, not muddy, not heavy. Again, you can use just ochres, maybe a tiny bit of burnt umber, though not a lot, and some reds. Try to mix these colors in different proportions. Remember to paint the edges very soft. We don't need hard edges. Remember that there is a lot of air around the rose. The air always softens the edges. And remember that the things, the objects which are close to us, we can paint with more attention and make the edges look sharper. Everything that is further away, we should paint softer. So I hope this tutorial was interesting and helpful for you. And the main idea of this tutorial was to let you understand that for the shadows and for the lights, we can use different colors in order to avoid matte in the shadows and lights. So first of all, be careful with blacks and dark browns, especially when you paint light objects, which usually do not get really dark shadows. They're not really heavy, they are usually full of reflections and very transparent. Therefore, in my opinion, it's better to divide your palette and have colors for the lights and on the other side colors for the shadows. It will be quite wrong to find one color, like a color for middle tone, and then darken it with some umbers or browns or blacks and paint lights just by adding more white into it. Of course, don't be afraid of using pure colors from the tubes. In the very beginning, you can use them and make your painting look much brighter than it is in the real life. Okay guys, I think that's it. Here I'm gonna stop, make some final touch-ups here and there. If you like this video, subscribe to my channel, find me on Instagram and Facebook, and do not forget that you can download the full video tutorials from my page. Check out the links in the description. I wish you good luck with your own artworks guys, and see you in the next episode.